What is up, basketball fans? Welcome to the NBA Outlet. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me, as always, Kory Waldron. Kory, how we doing?
Doing good. Snowed in. Got a little bit of snow coming in the Northeast. It's got me hindered in my room, which is like an ice box, but we had basketball on all day, and we're getting ready to talk about some basketball.
It's not bad because, you had football, you had basketball, you're locked inside. I didn't get a big storm over in Connecticut. It was more of like a light dusting. I know over by you, it's a little bit worse, but we're going to dive in. Plenty to talk about. As always, though, quick reminder, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, OTGbasketball.com, and YouTube. Also, make sure you head to FOCO USA. We're running a ton of deals for Cyber Monday. Also, we got discount code for you, OTG NBA 10. But Kory, we're going to dive in first into studs and duds. Who are you rolling with for studs?
So I have 4 names down for each category. I watched a lot of basketball this week, so it's like easier to pick guys. So first off, my like high key stud is James Harden. And again, there's gonna be like a bunch of names in this category. I feel like we can use every week. James Harden had 60 points last night in 3 quarters. Once again, had a couple big 30-point games earlier in the week. He just does everything for that Houston Rockets offense. And again, this week, he just had it going. And like watching him last night against the Hawks, like he had 60 points. I think on like 25 or 26 shots. Like it's just insane.
Yeah, I actually had Harden as mine as well. I think he averaged over 40 on the week. And like you mentioned, just that monster game he had against the Hawks. And you were on the OTG Twitter and you're telling me like, he could possibly drop 70 or 80 tonight. If the Hawks were more competitive, it was a real possibility. Harden was lights out. And when that three is falling, he's just a different player.
Yeah, and that's another thing. What happens if that game is more competitive? Does he have a chance to go for 80? Because he was also like a couple shy of his career high. And he looked at the jumbotron, was like, oh shit, like I was that close. I'm like, yes, you were that close. And I'll just mention my other guys that I had. I had Ben Simmons. He had a huge final minute, which broke my heart because the Pacers played probably the sloppiest ending to a game I've seen in a long time. He had 3 of his 4 steals in under the last 15 to 20 seconds of that game. But in general, he had a very solid week. He actually is extremely high in a lot of the defensive categories in the NBA right now. But he was impressive. Joel Embiid had a killer week, multiple big games, big double-doubles. And then lastly, got to give a shout out to Carmelo Anthony. He has been very good so far. He helped the Portland Trailblazers get 3 wins this past week, a couple big double-double performances. It's nice to see Melo hitting the ground running.
Do you think Melo is really taking a stride forward, or it's been some of the competition the Blazers have faced, or this is a guy they can count on for the rest of the season?
And they play the Bulls twice. Bulls don't play defense. That's you gotta keep in mind who the competition, as you mentioned, the Oklahoma City Thunder, with the other team in the middle. But I think offensively you can at least rely on Melo to be able to give you some points. 15 to 25 points. I just don't think defensively, he's had some nice moments, but again, Chicago Bulls don't play much defense, and I think it's easier for Melo to look not as exposed.
Yeah, especially against a bad defense, you're going to just score more points. And who'd you have for your dud of the week?
So again, I had a couple duds. So my prime dud was the one I watched a lot this week. That was Miles Turner. This has been like a big debate going on in Twitter, and there was a lot of people going about this the wrong way with his recent play. And he's been getting like a lot of slander. And we mentioned this a little bit beforehand. He deleted his Twitter. He deleted all of his photos off Instagram. So he's kind of deactivated his social media at the moment because of some of the criticism he's been getting. Or I should say criticism, just like the bullying. Because I think like me, who's a rational fan, when I criticize, like I'm not taking personal shots at the player. I'm simply saying, Miles Turner struggles at rebounding to a high degree, and offensively, he isn't an aggressive player, and doesn't have the ability necessarily to get himself going on offense. So you have to have sets ran for him, which is an issue with Nate McMillan. But for what they're paying Miles Turner and the hopes they have for this year, Miles Turner has just been a pretty big negative. And last night against the 76ers, when he's matched up against an elite center like Joel Embiid, you just really saw some of those weaknesses get kind of exposed. And then Lauri Markkanen was my actual dud. He's just really bad this year.
I think it's his 3rd time on the duds showcase.
Probably. I think I catch too many glimpses, and I probably because of the Melo games, I watched more Blazers this week than I would have anticipated. But he's shooting just 34% from the field, 24% from 3. This week he had a 13-point game, 8-rebound game, a 10-point game with a 1-rebound game, an 8-point game with a 4-rebound game. Like, 3 games this week, he's averaging, like 9 or 11.5 points with like 6 or 5 rebounds. Not very good. And he's the guy they're trying to build around. So those are my 2 duds.
Yeah, no, Marketing, like I mentioned, he's been my dud. He's been your dud. He's been a big reason why the Bulls haven't been as good as expected. He's a guy that was expected to make an all-star jump. It hasn't been there. And you mentioned Miles Turner. It just feel like Miles Turner hasn't gotten comfortable this year. With the early injury, then he was just banged up. It took a while to get back, and it's just like he's not in sync. And then that whole combination between him and Sabonis, I'm not sure if he knows what his role is.
Yeah, I mean that's a big part of it too, I think, is the fact that Sabonis obviously is the one you want in the paint more, especially for rebounding opportunities. And you kind of want Turner to float around the outside for more of a shooting threat offensively. But again, like, it's also, I think, a big part of how Nate McMillan uses them. They put him in too much pick and roll, where Miles Turner is the guy you want in pick and pop. And I don't think they utilize that part of the game enough.
And essentially, they don't even need to put him in the action. Him not being in the action, being pulled away from the rim, is just pulling a big and possibly a center, depending on how the other team matches up, away from the rim, opening up things for Brogdon and Sabonis. So you think that'd be something Nate McMillan would look to do more?
Precisely. I did have 2 more duds I'll just throw out there. Devin Booker wasn't great this week. He had a 12-point game and an 18-point game. Both of those games he shot under 40%. One of them under 35%. It's not a major concern, but he wasn't as good this week, which, the Phoenix Suns have started been falling back down to earth again, right? Ricky Rubio has been banged up. He is back, but now the Suns have lost a couple games. They might have been able to win, or they probably could have won to at least keep them higher up in the standings, but now they're sort of on a little bit of a free fall. And Blake Griffin just doesn't look fully healthy yet. He just looks
rusty.
Yeah, it looks really rusty. So he was a slight dud as well. But again, as you just mentioned, he was missing with injuries, and he's just rusty.
And that whole team kind of looks bad. They have a good win tonight against the Spurs, but overall, I think the Pistons have been in a funk, kind of similar to what we mentioned with the Bulls. I'm going with another Bulls guy, and he was getting a lot of hype for Rookie of the Year, and that's Kobe White. Did not have a good week. 24 minutes a game, 24% from the field, 15% from 3, and 7 points a game. So it was just a rough night for Kobe. Obviously, we know he's a little bit of a gunner, but you're going to have to at least make more than 35% of your shots.
Yeah, that's a rough night for good old Kobe White. But again,
I'll give an honorable mention. Yeah, and I'm going to give an honorable mention to Joel Embiid for having 0 points in a game this week. He's way too good to have 0 points in any NBA game, regardless of the other team and regardless of the defense.
Yeah, that was a really bad performance by Embiid as well. Bounced back, though, nicely since then.
You knew that you didn't want to be the team he faced the next night.
Yeah, for sure. That's a pissed off Embiid.
So, and obviously he's not going to do that again. Shout out to the Raptors who have been just excellent defensively, and they had another monster win tonight. But we're going to talk about power rankings. These rankings are combined, or these rankings came together via our staff. Over 10 different guys voted on this, and we're going to dive through and kind of give our take on how they ranked it all out. But first up, we're going to start from the top, work our way down. The Los Angeles Lakers at number 1. You like this, Kory?
Yeah, no, this is good with me. I believe this is where I had them. Yeah, I had them number 1. They've 17-3. They did catch a loss tonight to the Dallas Mavericks. Again, though, it was pretty much close throughout. The Mavericks just had a very big third quarter, and the Lakers got a little bit stagnant. But overall, the Lakers have been the best team in the league. LeBron James has been, Wash King tour. He keeps kind of like putting across this mantra of you guys just pretty much said I was down and out. Yeah, I think the Lakers being 1 is fair. I could see 2, but realistically, by record standards and how they've performed, it's 1.
And at the time these rankings were put in, the Lakers hadn't lost yet, so I think 1 is fair. And then, if you're going to make an argument for anybody else, it would be the Bucks, who came in at number 2.
Right. And the Bucks at 2, to me, is fair. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo is still doing everything you want from your star standpoint. Yes, they're missing Chris Middleton. I think Eric Bledsoe was a little bit streaky. You're definitely not seeing the same type of production from a Brook Lopez, but they're just getting things done. Defensively, they're still a tough team. Antetokounmpo is just a freak. I mean, the fact that the 3-point shot is getting more and more consistent, or at least more of a threat to his game, has definitely opened up the court for him.
Yeah, I think, the Bucks as a unit haven't been as good as last season, but it's like Giannis has even gotten better than he was last year. And that's really saying a lot. But number 3, Los Angeles Clippers.
Fair. Paul George is back. He had a really bad shooting night the other night, only 5 points. I wanted to give him the dud of the week, but he only had one bad game.
Yeah.
Although he hasn't been shooting super well, there is some inconsistency still to his game. But the Clippers at 3 is fair. They're finally healthy. We're starting to see Kawhi and Paul George find some on the court chemistry. Lou Williams still gets buckets, Harrell. So I think the Clippers at 3 is fair. When they're healthy, this is going to be a battle in the West between the Lakers and Clippers, realistically.
Yeah, I think the Clippers get 3 because anybody they match up against, you almost feel like the Clippers are going to win that game, or it's going to be a tough matchup for the other team. So 3 is fair for them. Obviously, they'll be in this top 5 all season long. And the team that actually was about tied with them was the Boston Celtics at number 4.
I had the Celtics as 3. I think when I did these rankings, though, Kemba hadn't even gotten hurt yet. So I think they're in this 3 to 5 range. It might be a tad, like a smidget too high. But again, they're playing a Brad Stevens type of offense. The ball, moves to the best looking shot. There is no I guy. It's a we situation going on in Boston once again. I think Tatum and Brown are really starting to pop and find some chemistry between the two of them. We know what Marcus Smart brings. And the collective effort from the big men has been surprising, between Daniel Tice, Robert Williams, and Enes Kanter. All of these guys have a certain ability that they stand out in, and Stevens has been able to use this collective effort to really get the Celtics in a good position.
Yeah, I would say earlier in the week I'd be fine with the Celtics in the top 5, but I think they've kind of progressed out of the top 5. Their defense has kind of shown some lapses, and the bigs each have their own skill set, but I think that's an area where we've seen teams kind of attack them a little bit and have success. This past week with Jared Allen having some of his best games of the season against them. So I think I would push Boston just right out of the top 5, and I'd move, probably a team like Denver up into the top 5, who's been really good of late.
I would even say the Raptors.
The Raptors. We have the luxury of watching the game that just happened where they just dismantled the Utah Jazz, and they've been a monster defensively. I think, behind the Bucks, they've probably been the second best team in the Eastern Conference.
I think almost easily, I would say they've been the second best team, at least from a consistent standpoint. Defensively, what they bring. Offensively, they've had some issues, but realistically, they're still winning, and Kyle Lowry isn't even healthy, or Serge Ibaka.
Yeah, and Siakam has just been disgusting. Like, he's just taken his game to another level, and we've kind of talked about that on a previous show. But moving on to number 5, the Houston Rockets.
I think they're in this 5 to 10 range. I had the Rockets 4th when I did these rankings. James Harden gives you buckets every night. They are riddled with some injuries right now. You're relying on Ben McLemore, which isn't great. Russell Westbrook brings what he brings to the game. I think it's fair, but I would probably move them a couple spots lower. I think realistically, against these top teams, they're having big nights and Harden's having big scoring outputs. I don't think right now, because of health, that the depth is there for the Rockets.
Yeah, I think Houston, they've gotten the wins, but they've been kind of inconsistent. They were really bad to start the year, then they got really good, and now they've kind of been all over the place. So I'd move Houston probably right out of the top 5. Like I said, we mentioned a team like Denver, a team like Toronto would probably be in there. And they're the next 2 teams at 6 and 7. You got Denver, Toronto, and then at 8 you got Miami. Do you like these spots, or would you like to move those 2 teams up, or all 3?
I think I would like to move Denver up. I'm okay with where Miami. I think I might move Miami 1 spot. I like what Miami has, but this has been a team that, on a nightly basis, it's either they win by 30 or they lose by 20. Again, I know tonight they actually had a close game, which of course is goes figure to ruin my point. But for the most part of this season, they've been a team that they win big and they lose big. So they really they don't have the consistent identity yet. In that fashion of I think they had this time was the first game decided by less than 3 points, I think, all year, which says a lot when you're early, 5th into the season. But I think I would keep them where they are. I would move the Nuggets up.
Yeah, I would move the Nuggets up and move the Raptors up. I think I'd keep the Heat. If anything, maybe push the Heat down. I think, like you mentioned, they've been inconsistent this year, and that's what happens when you rely on a lot of young guys for offense, guys like Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, even Robinson. These are guys that haven't had big rotation minutes in the NBA, and they're not used to it on a nightly basis. And I think offensively, there could be times where they have issues in the future.
Yeah, and then for the Nuggets, it really it's all about Jokic, right? He just hasn't been the all around dominant offensive center we saw last year. He's just not in shape realistically. Looks a little bit banged up, maybe even. But I know the other night, he had just 8 points on like 9 shots. It's just weird how sometimes in the offense he gets so passive in trying to get himself going, and then of course he has nights where he just struggles scoring wise or shooting wise. But I still think at the end of the day, the Nuggets offensively have so much firepower. And they haven't even really begun to like switch rotations out to try and get Michael Porter Jr. Like, they're just log jammed. And I'm curious to see if they make a trade at some point. But right now, I would still have them in the elite category.
Yeah, they have so much depth on that team. You think at some point they want to make a trade for quantity for quality, where they
Yeah.
can upgrade a position, whatever it may be, bring in another all-star or something. And, it's been pointed out, Jokic hasn't been amazing to start the year, and it looks like he's tired. Obviously, he's played a lot of consecutive basketball with, the summer games and stuff like that. So maybe he can get in shape where they can work him into some rest. But moving down the list, we'll kind of go at 3 at a time. At number 9, we got the Sixers, 10, the Jazz, and number 11, the Mavericks.
I think the Sixers, I might try and boost a spot, but I think the Sixers are good where they're at. Embiid, when he's on, is top 2, or arguably the best center in the league. Ben Simmons, for what he lacks in some of his offensive production, defensively he's really good. Playmaking wise, pushing the tempo, extremely good. Tobias Harris has been the one just big guy to circle so far for this season. His inability to hit catch and shoot shots, I think he's been better actually of the last week or so in scoring. Josh Richardson's been a little bit banged up. They're still trying to figure things out. But again, they have a lot of talent on that 76ers team in their starting lineup. And then for the Jazz, not a great week. I probably would move them down. I think the Mavericks at this point in time would have over the Jazz. A tough loss to the Pacers, a blowout loss tonight. At one point it was 77-37. They did have a career high third quarter run, but they ended up getting back into the game. But again, they were down by 40 at halftime. So I think the Jazz, I would probably drop a spot.
Yeah, and I feel like that 49-point quarter is almost just like garbage time because the Raptors knew they weren't going to lose the game. Like when you're up by like 30 or 40 points, like you don't have to do much to win at that point. So I agree. I think the Jazz have kind of underperformed so far this season. The Sixers you can't take out of the top 10 just because they're so talented, but they're definitely not fully in sync. And I think a trade's going to be coming for them to bring in some more shooting like we mentioned in the offseason. And then in terms of the Mavericks at 11, I think they're okay right now. And just the fact when you have Luka, who's played like a top 10 player, it almost makes you a top 10 team. It's just that depth that's probably holding him back, and his supporting cast just hasn't been amazing. It's like one night Tim Hardaway Jr. will play well, one night it'll be Porzingis. They just need a consistent performer every night. Hopefully Porzingis can be that guy if he can shake off the rust.
Yeah, and I think from at least this week, we saw 2 nights where Tim Hardaway Jr. actually had big nights. He had 2, I think, 20-point games in the past week or so. And you need that. You need that type of marksman shooter that can bring you some offense, because it has been, as you mentioned, a lot of Luka with a ragtag crew to go along with him, with one of those guys seeming to step up. But if they can get some consistent performances, then maybe the Mavericks actually make a run of things in the conference.
Yeah, maybe if guys just want to swap off every other night, that'll work too, just because Luka's been so good. And, he averaged a 30-point triple-double for the month of November, which I don't think has ever been done. So incredible stuff from such a young player. But moving on to 12, 13, and 14, we got the Pacers, T-Wolves, and Suns.
I think the Pacers are. It's funny. I had all of these teams in the same sort of category for myself. I think the Pacers are good where they are. A nice win this week over the Jazz, a tough close loss to the Sixers. Again, there's no Victor Oladipo. They're still figuring things out with, running with some bench players in some bigger roles. The struggles of Turner that we mentioned earlier. I think Sabonis has been solid. Malcolm Brogdon has been better than advertised. Jeremy Lamb has been a really good productive player for them. TJ Warren's a bucket. So for me, I think the Pacers are right about where they should be at 12. The Timberwolves, again, it's been the Cat and Wiggins show. Those 2 guys have been performing at a very high level. The Suns, I think maybe they could drop a spot, but I'm okay with where the Suns are because still they got off to a hot start. Devin Booker, Ricky Rubio, that pairing still works. Ricky Rubio is just, I think, trying to get back from being hurt, just kind of like reinstate how the offense was, because him and Baines both got back around the same time.
Yeah, I think I'm good with the Pacers because they're kind of ascending, getting healthier, and just some of the role guys they signed in the summer are just getting more comfortable. T-Wolves are cool. Obviously, Cat's been awesome, and you mentioned Wiggins. I think the Suns would be a team, though, I would drop a couple spots. 3-7 of their last 10. they just lost some of that early juice, and maybe they've caught a couple teams by surprise because they thought it was the same Phoenix team. Now they're getting a better punch from teams, so I'd probably drop them out of the top 15.
I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, this obviously hasn't been a good stretch for them, and it does feel like there's always that one team, to start the year that gets off to a really hot start. They're winning games, and you might be right. Teams might have been walking into Phoenix, not realizing that there is added talent on that roster.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, it was pretty much almost a guaranteed W or almost a guaranteed blowout. But on to the next three, we got the Orlando Magic at 15, the Nets at 16, and the Kings at 17.
Yeah, I would move the Nets up. I would probably drop the Magic, also dealing with some injuries. I know they did get a win tonight, I believe, over the Warriors. But again, went down to the wire against the Warriors. That's a depleted Warriors team. Yes, the Magic are missing Aaron Gordon.
I think he was back tonight.
Oh, Gordon was back tonight? Oh, you're right. I think he was back tonight. Still no Vucevic.
Yep.
But again, I don't think that's promising that you struggled to beat the Golden State Warriors. Now, granted, these are still professional teams. So I think the Magic I would drop because they just haven't been that impressive. Yes, Markelle Fultz has had some really nice moments. He had a ton of them tonight. He's really starting to find his groove again, or find his groove for the first time, I should say. And then the Nets, as we've mentioned, or you mentioned off wax, Jared Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie, both those guys have been having some big time performances. Then the Kings, they're steady, they're solid. Harrison Barnes helped with a nice overtime win over the Nuggets. But this feels like the right range for these teams. Probably with the Magic, though, being behind these two.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I'd go Nets, Kings, Magic, just because Orlando's been disappointing. They've had the injuries, but it just feels like it's going to come to a point where Orlando maybe should trade some of the veterans on that team and just roll forward with Fultz, Isaac, Bamba, and potentially Gordon, or maybe move him too, because I think those young guys have some real potential. I'm not sure if the combination is good enough to do anything in the East, or even down the line, the combination is just not going to gel right to be an Eastern Conference contender or even just a second round team.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you want to hear more Nets talk, you can head to the Brooklyn Buzz. They've been playing really well lately. They've taken their game up, but still, they're going to take another level when Kyrie comes back. But next three teams, we got the Thunder, the Blazers, and the Hornets at 20.
These teams are all really close to me, and
I would push the Hornets down because I think they've been substantially they've had a couple wins in there, but they've had some really okay, we're back to being one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, I actually think I got these rankings somewhat. Oh no, I had these teams a little bit spots higher. But I think the Hornets would be 20th for me. I think I would have the Thunder at 17 and the Blazers at 16. The Blazers had a good week. Obviously, they won all three of their games. Carmelo having some big nights. Dame Lillard's finally back out there. He looks good. McCollum was scoring. Having three guys scoring 20 points in the game shows how the offense is moving. Rodney Hood is shooting a really high percentage on just jump shots, basically. So I think I would have the Blazers in first, and then the Thunder, and then the Hornets. I might even drop the Hornets another spot, but this probably is where they are.
Yeah, I'd probably drop them just out of the top 20. I mean, no other team has really been like, oh, God, they should jump up in front of them. But I just feel like they've been so bad. And you mentioned the Blazers are starting to get their things together. And OKC has just been pretty competitive on a nightly basis. So props to them and the veterans. Obviously, that'll change probably around the deadline. But next three, San Antonio at 21, Atlanta at 22, and Detroit at 23.
Yeah, so I had the Spurs high when I first did my rankings because I felt like the team is still good. They're just not performing well. But again, it's another week of them losing. Another big loss tonight against the Pistons. It just feels like that team is in desperate need of change. I think we're coming closer and closer to a DeMar DeRozan trade. I think I would probably drop the Spurs, though. I would move the Hawks up, even though the Hawks don't win games either.
The Hawks have lost 10 straight.
Yeah, but they're in most of those games, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, but I mean, you lose 10 straight games. I just don't think things are going to get better for the Hawks until John Collins gets back. Nothing is really going to change. They just don't necessarily have enough. I mean, personally, for me and the Hawks, I think they're probably dropping down to 25. You lose 10 straight games, you're just not good.
It's fair. You're losing game, right? No, you're right.
If you lost 5 and you lost, three buzzer beaters, and then 2 by 5 points, but you lose 10 straight, you're just bad. And they got demolished by the Rockets, like you mentioned earlier.
Right, yeah, it was 150 to 111. So that's a molly whopping. So you're right. So I guess the Hawks do need to get dropped, obviously.
I think I would drop San Antonio close to that bottom to
Well, the
25
Spurs
too. They've
lost,
been.
the Spurs lost. They were on their own 10-game losing streak this year, weren't they? Or
Yep.
8 game?
Yeah.
So yeah, both those teams probably drop at least 5 each, right? And I guess the Grizzlies should be moved up because they've been playing better basketball. I would even say the Pelicans could move up a couple spots because I think they're even though but again, they're not winning a ton of games either. But I feel like they've played a lot better since they've gotten healthy.
5 straight losses for the Pelicans. So it's just been like kind of this bottom. We can give the bottom 10 just because it's easier to kind of think it all out.
I feel like they're all losing. Are any of these bottom teams not like are on winning streaks?
I feel like at the bottom of the top 10, you probably want to push maybe Washington up, who's had maybe some impressive stuff and they've scored a lot of points. A team that we haven't necessarily been high on going to the season, but they've kind of impressed early on. But a lot of these teams are on losing streaks, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So you got the Pelicans 5 losing streak, Warriors 2 losing streak, New York Knicks 6, Hawks 10, Cleveland, Chicago both on 3 losing streaks. And then the Pistons won tonight, but they were 3 for their last. They're 3 for their last 3 for their last 7. 10. 10. Yeah, 3 for their last 10. Yeah.
So it's been it's pretty rough in the bottom of the NBA. And just to give them all out, we got Spurs 21, 22 Hawks, 23 Pistons, 24 Grizzlies, 25 Pelicans, 26 Bulls, 27 Wizards, 28 Cavs, 29 Warriors, and 30 Knicks. Do you think the Knicks are the worst team, or do you think the Warriors are?
I think
Golden State is. Yeah.
I think the Warriors are. I think the Knicks have at least more competent players where I feel like there's the night where the Knicks can get hot and actually beat you. Whereas I just don't feel as confident in like the Warriors having 2 or 3 guys play really well that puts them in a good position to win. I think the Knicks do have more competent talent.
Yeah, like the Warriors almost have to get lucky to win, where you can see the Knicks win a game. I mean, their last 2 matchups with Boston and Philadelphia, they were in both those games in the fourth quarter. They just couldn't capitalize and execute and run a proper offense. A lot of the play. Yeah. So, but I don't think like really for the bottom 10, so many of them have been bad that I don't think any of them like stick out substantially, other than maybe the Wizards popping up. We talked about the Grizzlies being a little bit better. The Pistons are probably at the top of the bunch because they have good players, but a lot of these teams are just playing bad basketball.
Yeah, I think I'm okay. So I think actually what you made a good point here. Pretty much I think you put the Hornets at 20, which is what we had. I think even the Wizards should probably be 21. And then from like 22 down, you have the Spurs, Hawks, Pistons, Grizzlies, like those are all the bad teams, right? And I think the Grizzlies, Pelicans, and then probably the Pistons, no, probably just the Grizzlies and Pelicans of that bunch are like the good bad teams to watch. Yeah. Right? Like those are the teams that at least on like a nightly basis, they may not be winning, but they're playing an enjoyable brand of basketball. Whereas like the Bulls, the Warriors, the Knicks, like those teams are just losing and not playing great basketball in general. Hawks, as you mentioned, losing 10 straight. Obviously, that's not good winning basketball.
Pistons, Trey is still fun though.
Trey is fun. I mean, the other night against the Pacers, I thought we were going to lose that game. It was sloppy, and Trey was just every time he touched the ball, I was like, this is going to go in. And the Cavaliers, they're a decent bad team, I will say. They're not fun to watch for me personally. But Kevin Love is performing. Tristan Thompson's upped his value. And Darius Garland and Colin Sexton, they both look promising.
Yeah, they have enough okay players and a few good players squeezed in there where it's like, okay, you actually have to play decent basketball to beat the Cavs, and they might make you earn the win. Where some of these other bad teams literally will hand you a dub.
Yeah, like I think the Bulls, like for example, I think like the Knicks, Warriors, and Bulls, I think those are the 3 worst teams in the NBA.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think it's like the Bulls in terms of like being, I think they're probably the most disappointing team in the NBA for sure because they're like talented, but they're just so bad and they like can't put it together.
Zach Lowe had them making the playoffs over the Indiana Pacers. That's all I will say.
You'll never let that one go.
Breaks my heart.
But that's enough for the power rankings. We're going to try to do this every month. Actually, Kory and Jack are going to put something up on the OTG Basketball website. It'll be up there this week if you want to check it out for a little bit more in-depth view on these teams.
Amen.
But Kory, I'm going to pass it over to you for some hot take shot fake.
Hot take shot fake. We are back rolling through the Twitter sphere, trying to figure out, just trying to figure out takes. So first up, Patrick Beverley will win Defensive Player of the Year. Hot take or shot fake?
That is a shot fake times 10. I mean, like some people have pointed out, he hasn't really necessarily done an amazing job defensively where he's shutting down guys. He's super active and energetic and annoying, but it's not like he's making a ton of crazy defensive plays. Like he's not even the best defensive player on his own team.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And also like guards just don't generally win this award.
If a guard was going to win it, it would be Marcus Smart. That would be the guy who has the best chance because he can defend, almost all five positions. Some centers he can't defend, but a majority of them he can, and he's just all over the place creating havoc.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Next up, Chris Paul will be playing for the Miami Heat at some point this season. Hot take or shot fake?
Oh man, this is tough. I mean, this is probably his most likely trade landing spot, but I'm gonna go shot fake because the trades just don't seem super likely with his contract.
Yeah, I would say shot fake because just don't think Pat Riley wants to bring in an old superstar.
Yeah.
I just don't think it makes sense. You've seen your promising young core. You would have to sell some of those guys off. I just don't think Chris Paul is the answer.
Yeah, he doesn't really move the needle for them and make them that much better. But they could get a little bit happy if they end up with a top 4 seed by trade deadline and they want to splash it up.
Agreed. Luka Doncic is a top 3 candidate in the MVP race. Hot take or shot fake?
Hot take. I'll take it. I think, when you average a triple-double for a month with 30 points and you're just pretty much carrying your team to a winning playoff record in the Western Conference, you deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where we are, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is this is a guy on almost any given night, he's on triple-double watch. And I think when you're doing that and your team's winning, and you're not even only winning, the Mavericks have definitely exceeded expectations. We all predicted them to be better this year and be competitive in the playoff race, but they've put themselves in the middle and the upper part of the Western Conference.
And they cooked the Lakers today. That's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it was a pretty dominating win. Next, Ja Morant will have a better career than both Zion Williamson and RJ Barrett. Hot take or shot fake?
This is tough to say. I mean, it's the hardest with Zion because we actually haven't seen him play any NBA minutes yet. So it's like, is he going to get out there? I'm going to say shot fake because I don't know any of them are going to have a substantially better career than the others. But if I was going to lean with one, it would probably be Zion over the other two.
I mean, the injury is just like, this is what this hot take is, right? This is pretty much based on if Zion's going to be healthy or not. Because if Zion's healthy, he has the athletic ability to be better than both these guys. I think I'm rolling though. I think it is a hot take because I think Ja Morant definitely has the possibility to be the best of these three guys. I think RJ Barrett is another guy who I'm pretty high on. So I'll say hot take. But again, like we haven't even seen Zion yet, so I think these kind of takes are so just in the moment because I feel like once we see Zion and if he's healthy, everyone's gonna be changing their tune probably.
And it feels like the environment in Memphis is better than New York, so I think RJ Barrett, maybe we'll give him a little bit of a slight pass because Morant's been better, but it's not like Barrett's in a great situation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Hot take. Yes, there is a heavy debate on who the best center in the NBA is. But the best center to build your team around, it's Nikola Jokic. Hot take or shot fake?
I mean, I think it's a shot fake because it depends on your preference and what you're looking for. There's an easy argument for Karl Anthony Towns being the number one center to build around.
Yeah.
Because like Jokic, you could automatically assume is like if you're building a team, do you want a player who's not good defensively? Like, not to say he's terrible, but he's not going to be elite defensively. And then when you look at Embiid, the question mark is health. Is this a guy that you want to build around? Because, staying on the court is a big part of that. And, I think there's an argument for Cat to be made, and I'm pretty sure he's the youngest of the three as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a debate that I've had, I feel like, more so than ever the last couple of weeks. Because Towns has become this versatile guy who can hit, 7 threes in a game, can beat you down low. His defense is better. He's actually, I think, in the elite category for playmaking as well. He's actually averaging like 4.5 to 5 assists a game.
His passing has taken another step this year.
For sure. So I think he's got to be the conversation. As you mentioned, we talk about like durability, and even just conditioning. It's capped by a mile compared to both of these other guys. Because even Embiid with his health, there has also been the question mark: is he in good shape in general? So I think this is a shot fake.
Agreed. I don't think it's a lock where I think you could make an argument for each guy depending on the other players you're planning to build around or the identity you're looking to build.
Yeah. Hot take. The Toronto Raptors will make the NBA Finals again despite losing Kawhi Leonard.
I shot fake here, but I think it is possible, but I'm leaning with the Bucks still.
Yeah, I'm going with shot fake. I still think there's two stars on other teams. We're like, yes, Siakam is a star, but I don't know if I can rely on the supporting cast to get that Raptors team past Antetokounmpo or past the Joel Embiid when it comes to a 7-game series.
Especially when teams are going to actually be playing good defense. The thing with Toronto that separates them from a lot of teams is they almost play playoff level defense throughout the regular season, where a lot of teams don't pick up their defensive level until the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's also fair. Hot take or hot shot fake. The NBA replay procedure does not work. The refs don't give a damn about getting the call right. Hot take or shot fake.
I'm going to say shot fake because it depends on the crew. I've seen good calls overturned, but then I've also seen them not overturn something that was pretty obvious, or instead of actually like making the opposite call where they go from calling a defensive foul to an offensive foul, they'll just be like no foul, jump ball, which is just like almost counterproductive because you're only getting half the call right.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna say shot fakes. I don't think they're like intentionally messing up calls or not trying to fix the right calls. But I mean, there has been plenty of times, I'm sure you've seen, I've seen, like you mentioned, they really don't always get the calls right, I feel like. But that's even like football. They put it in this review system, and I see pass interference calls get reviewed, and they still get the calls wrong.
I feel like it's already better than the NFL's.
Yeah, it definitely is. The NFL is just like, they do it to be like petty almost. Like, yeah, I know you guys can see this, but we just don't give a damn.
Yeah, like especially on pass interference in the NFL, which is kind of similar to the NBA adding the challenge rule this year. They added the challenge for the NFL on PI, and I feel like maybe they've overturned like 5 out of 40 calls.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Hot take or shot fake. The Portland Trailblazers and the Detroit Pistons will both make the playoffs still.
Oh, this is a tough one. I mean, you don't feel confident with Orlando in that 8 seed. And I mean, like Detroit hasn't been good, but you think they'll play better. And then on the Portland side, like Dame and CJ are pretty much better than most of the duos in front of them. Like you have confidence they should be able to outproduce Minnesota and Phoenix at some point, especially if Carmelo can at least be competent off the bench. But I just really can't get behind Detroit, so I'm going to go shot fake.
I'm going with hot take.
Ooh.
Because
is that some Pistons love from Kory? Damn.
It's weird, right? I feel dirty. Gotta take a shower. It's more so I want to believe in the Blazers. I think the Blazers are still a playoff team, and I just think realistically in the East, am I positive the Hornets are going to be that 8 seed? Like, no. Like, I think that team has to come back down to earth. So I think I would probably lean towards Detroit figuring out and getting together. Because again, Reggie Jackson is hurt. Blake Griffin is rusty, so I do think this team starts to gets it together to get going. So I'll say hot take.
It'll be pretty much between the Nets, Magic, and Detroit for 7 and 8. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't seem like Atlanta can get it together without John Collins, and Chicago's just been so bad. There's no reason to have confidence in them. And then Charlotte, like we mentioned, they've won some games kind of early, getting lucky, but I think overall they're a bad team. And Washington can score, but they can't play any defense. So like Detroit's definitely going to have their opportunity as long as they can get back to at least playing average basketball.
Yeah, exactly. I think I would highly agree with that. Next up, hot take or shot fake. Trae Young is a top 5 point guard in the NBA.
This is extremely tough. I mean, let's go through the point guards, so far this season. Just let's subtract Steph because he's injured. He's going to miss the entire year, so it makes it more likely for Trae.
Yep.
You got Dame, you got Kyrie, you got Kemba. Then after that, who would you have?
Is Kyle Lowry in the mix?
I feel like he hasn't played enough to really put him in the mix. We'll just, subtract him for injury.
Has Malcolm Brogdon played enough to be in the mix?
Yeah, I think he's played enough to be in the mix. I think Trae it's tough to say. Like, Trae might have been better than Malcolm. It's like Brogdon's been super efficient, but Trae's had, to carry, I would say, a bigger load in a sense and taking more shots. But Brogdon's efficiency has been lights out.
And then Brogdon, well, I mean, that's the counter argument that would be like Brogdon had that stretch of the season where, there was no Turner, there was no Jeremy Lamb. So, he'd had but it.
And then you look at Trae, and that's like his whole season, though.
Right. I mean, I think I would say Ben Simmons.
Yeah. It's like, do you consider Ben a point guard or is he like a forward? It's like tough to say, you know what I mean? If Ben's considered in there, he's probably in the top 5 because just defensively he's been pretty effective.
I think you consider Ben Simmons a point guard because when you're rolling out that starting 5, he's playing point guard.
Yeah. I think I might say Trey's been top 5 if we're actually subtracting guys based off of injury. He's averaging 28 points a game, over 8 assists, 45% from the field, 38% from three. And like we kind of mentioned, there's not many other good players on Atlanta. Not at least yet. A lot of them are just young guys with potential.
Yeah, I think I would say he's probably 5th.
Yeah.
If I had to guess on the list right now.
Yeah, I would say 5th.
Yeah, so hot take.
Hot take. There we go. Trey, you're top 5 at the moment.
Hot take or shot fake. James Harden is currently the most talented player in the NBA. This one's tough because realistically, everyone it's like the top 10 guys. They're all incredibly talented, right?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think you go with somebody who has a more unique skill set. Harden is extremely talented, but his volume is also ridiculous because if we've seen LeBron at that type of volume, maybe he would put up the same amount of numbers. You know what I mean? So it's is his volume just making him seem better, or do we value a guy like Anthony Davis who's extremely talented on both ends of the floor and he has a crazy skill set at his size?
Yeah. I probably lean towards shot fake.
I think maybe if you said just offensively, I think there's a better argument. But when you say is he the most talented player, it's tough to say.
Yeah, no, I would lean towards he's probably the most talented offensive player in the NBA. But even still, what he does is ridiculous, right? The fact that he creates almost all of his offense by himself through his own dribble moves at a high level. But, I wouldn't say he's the most talented for sure. Next up, hot take or shot fake. The Dallas Mavericks would make the NBA Finals if they had Andre Drummond.
Shot fake? I don't even know.
I don't even know why I read that to you.
This isn't the guy they need. If you said Bradley Beal, I'd maybe be interested, but still, they're not. I don't think they're one star from guarantee the NBA Finals. I think they're one star from being a contender.
They're definitely, I think, another player away from being actual threats, right?
Yeah.
We see, like you mentioned before, it's Luka Doncic. I even had a tweet kind of mapping this out. It's Luka Doncic, 3 pegs below him is Kristaps Porzingis, 4 pegs behind him is the rest of the cast, and so on and so forth. They have to get another bigger piece, I think. Like you mentioned, I don't think it's Drummond, even though I do think Drummond is in the wrong situation. I think if you put Andre Drummond in the right situation around a team that's not always hurt with shooters, it's probably like Andre Drummond on the Golden State Warriors, for example, probably really freaking good.
He'd be good in Dallas. I don't think he's the answer to all their problems. I think he'd be really good, but I don't think he makes them a guaranteed favorite in the West because he'd have passes thrown to him by Luka and then also KP on the perimeter to kind of stretch the floor.
I would agree. Last up, hot take or shot fake. The Utah Jazz are the most overrated thing since Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. Mike Conley is nothing more than a likable Rondo.
Okay, it's not a good comparison, but I think they are pretty underrated. I don't really have an opinion on Star Wars that much, so I can't say for that. But I think Utah's been probably one of the most overrated teams entering the season, at least of what we've seen from them so far. There's still plenty of time for them to turn around, and we've known they've got hot in the second half of seasons before. But right now, they seem kind of overrated.
He called Rudy Gobert in the follow-up tweet the French Timothy Mozgov.
Stop.
So pretty much just Utah Jazz hate. I would say hot take. I think they have been slightly overrated, but again, Bogdanovich missed some time. Conley was in that weird shooting funk. I still think they're trying to figure out how to get all of these guys touches and get these guys going.
Yeah, I easily could see them not being overrated by the second half of the season. Just right now, with the team they have and the talent they have, you expect them to be better.
For sure.
That wraps it up
that wraps it up for hot take shot fake.
All right, now we are on to games of the week. Monday, December 2nd. What do we need to watch?
Monday, December 2nd. It's funny enough, we've given them a lot of runtime. Not a big slate, but I'm rolling with the Utah Jazz, Philadelphia 76ers. Sixers coming off a nice week. Jazz coming into what isn't a must-win game, but when you've had some big losses against some good competition, this is a game that you kind of want to get back on track against.
A good team would have a bounce-back performance against Philadelphia. they would either win the game or at least be down to the wire against a really good Philadelphia team. So I'm going to say that's the game you need to watch just to get a better feel for the Jazz. And obviously, you want to see Gobert versus Embiid. Other than that, just the matchups that on Monday night are not that great.
Exactly.
On to Tuesday, we got a 7-game slate. What are we rolling with?
I'll be going with the Los Angeles Lakers and the Denver Nuggets.
Ooh.
Lakers obviously suffered their first loss to end their 10-game winning streak. The Nuggets lost their last game against the Sacramento Kings in overtime. So both teams are coming off a loss. Both teams are going to be looking for a win. And again, the Lakers have had, this quote-unquote very soft, easy schedule to start. Well, now it's about to get a little bit tougher, right? Mavericks were who they played earlier today. They get the Nuggets now on Tuesday. These are better teams in the Western Conference and a better way to see where these Lakers are at.
100%. And Denver's a great matchup for them, especially going to Denver. I mean, on Tuesday, you got a nice stretch of games. You can start off at 7:30, watch Miami versus Toronto, which I think is a nice matchup.
Yeah.
Then you can move over to Lakers versus Nuggets. Then after that game's over, you could probably catch the end of Portland versus the Clippers, which will probably have a nice finish too. So I think maybe the other four games aren't amazing, but there's 3 games that'll keep your interest all night long.
Yeah, thanks for mapping out my blueprint for Tuesday.
I got you. Now we are on to Wednesday night. We got a full slate on Wednesday. What are you rolling with?
Of course, I'm going to be watching my Pacers Thunder. I think Lakers Jazz would be my honorable mention, but I'm actually going to go with Miami Heat and Boston Celtics.
2 teams that are almost at the same level, and they've been impressed to start the year.
Right, exactly. Because I think these are 2 teams I'm still trying to figure out of who's better than each other when it comes in terms of who's third in line underneath the Sixers and Bucks. And I think this is a matchup where you can kind of just get a little bit of a feel for these teams.
Yeah, and as of right now, both teams 14-5. I'm going to go with Miami and Boston as well. But like you mentioned, you could catch Lakers and Jazz at the end of the night too.
Yep.
Now moving on to Thursday, what do you got?
Thursday night, I will be on OTG Basketball Twitter, holding down this entire slate of action.
No late game.
No late game, which is also why I kind of, I did my research and I was quick to put Thursday. We do this weekly roundabout kind of thing where Nick will put in who's going to go on Twitter and run the night. And I think I answered this one in 30 seconds. I was like, I know Thursday's got only early games.
I called last Tuesday, which only had 2 games.
I enjoy those kind of nights though, because you really get to focus in on the games that are on instead of having to worry about the 8 slate. Don't want to miss anything overly important.
But the weird thing about that last Tuesday was that it was an 8:30 start and a 9 p.m. start. You think if you only have 2 games, you do one at 7:30 and one at 10 or 9:30 just to break it up. But nope.
East Coast love.
Yeah.
East Coast love. So the game of the night though for Thursday, which is the one I'm looking forward to the most, would be Rockets Raptors.
Yep.
James Harden, the offense of the Rockets, Pascal Siakam, and the defensive-minded Raptors. Even though they had a big offensive performance tonight.
I think that's really the only spotlight matchup. Phoenix and New Orleans could be interesting, but you're not really super interested in that. Houston and Toronto, these are 2 teams that'll be in the playoffs and probably in the second round. But moving on to Friday, another big slate. What do we got?
I will say for schedule purposes, this will be the Pacers' 4th matchup already on the year against the Pistons. They'll be finishing up their season matchup on December 8th of 2019, which
very strange.
I find extremely strange. And I think the Pistons lead that 2-1 for people who care. So Nuggets Celtics I have as an honorable mention, but my game of the night is Clippers Bucks. Arguably the best team in the West versus arguably the best team in the East. Antetokounmpo will get his matchup against Kawhi. Hopefully Kawhi doesn't sit this time. But that would be my game of the night.
A lot of good players in this game. Obviously, you have Kawhi, PG, Giannis. It'll be interesting to see how they match up, especially with Giannis carrying most of the load for Milwaukee, with the Clippers kind of splitting it up between Kawhi, PG, and Lou Will.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it'll be a fun one. And, again, this is a possible NBA Finals matchup. And I will say the final game, Lakers-Blazers, also deserves an honorable mention. LeBron getting to play against Carmelo Anthony once again.
And it feels like Dame's just going to have something extra in that game. So keep an eye on that. Just a weird feeling I have. Now, Saturday, we have an interesting 2 p.m. start. Then we have 2 7:30 games, an 8 p.m. and a 10 p.m. Any of these games strike you as interesting?
The 2 p.m. game, even though the time's weird, that should be a fun offensive game. Both those teams just kind of like to get out and run. Pretty much a weak night, though. Rockets Suns is probably the game of the night. But I think if the Grizzlies Jazz were the same city edition or throwback uniforms the other night, that was really enjoyable for the eyes to watch.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't hate watching that again.
And just a quick shout out about the 2 p.m. starts. The NBA has made an effort, I believe, almost every Saturday, they have one of these early starts to strike the international audience, I think, specifically in Europe.
Oh, good. I like that.
Yeah. So
guys out there.
Yeah, and if you haven't noticed, like it's been a lot of early starts, and even today we had a couple 3 p.m. starts. It seems like there's been more matinees in the NBA this season, especially on Saturday and Sunday, where last year, like you didn't really necessarily have football games and NBA games match up, where now they're kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
But that wraps up for games of the week. Kory, any other final thoughts you want to touch on?
Well, should we touch on Sunday since we don't get to do Sunday?
Yeah, sure. Let's touch on Sunday. What do we want to watch on Sunday?
I mean, first off, your Nuggets and Nets play.
3 p.m.
At 3 p.m., nice matinee game.
Just messing up with my football watching schedule, but it's okay.
So, I mean, if, Kyrie Irving's back by then that, I know he's finally starting shooting around, but again, that's kind of like
I would expect him back by then.
Right, okay, so if you have Kyrie Irving back, I think that matchup becomes more intriguing because then you got to figure out, how are they going to use Spencer? Does Spencer go back to the bench? Does he come off and still continue to start? And I think, Raptors, Sixers, I think that's a fun matchup to watch.
Embiid's going to be determined.
Yeah, and I think Lakers Timberwolves to end the night is an interesting matchup. Just kind of see once again, Towns against an elite level big man.
Yeah, and they have a relationship too, him and AD. So watching them battle will be fun. But I'm definitely interested, obviously, in Denver, Brooklyn. But Toronto, Philadelphia, seeing that rematch again. Obviously, Embiid probably being pissed off about the previous game. I think that'll be a good one.
Yeah, for sure.
But that wraps it up. As always, Kory, a pleasure talking hoops with you. Big thanks to everybody for listening. Like I mentioned earlier, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, OTGbasketball.com, and YouTube. Also, make sure you head to Design Tree /Off the Glass, grab some OTG merch. And like I mentioned earlier, use discount code OTGNBA10. Get 10% off 2 items at Foco USA.
Peace out, Knuckleheads.